Hello. Today we're going to talk about proctors and some of the nuances involved with creating proctors, maintaining proctor lists, and going through the processes of making sure that the techs out in the field have the latest proctor information. Obviously, it's a pain point for a lot of folks, and it's something that we've all struggled with at one point or another. Uh, Typically in the past, people have maintain proctor lists, usually in the administrative staff for a lab, will accumulate information. And a lot of times people will create a spreadsheet in Excel, and they'll put the proctors in here, and they'll put rows and columns of critical information that are needed to identify uh, what a technician needs to know to select an appropriate proctor for a particular density test that they're going to take. And this is a typical one I've seen for other firms that I've worked with. And, it's got like 1,000 different records in there. These get quite large. And of course, if you get them in Excel, you put them in a table, you can sort and filter and do different things with them. And they can be pretty handy. Some folks even get quite creative, and they try and maintain a copy of this out on a Google Drive, and individuals can try and get access to a Google Drive and bring down the latest one every day. And somebody in the office is tasked with trying to keep this updated and adding any new proctor to the list. And obviously, you need to try and get rid of the old ones that aren't being used anymore. But it can be a pretty good task for some administrative staff person to kind of maintain these and keep them up to date, and then make sure that the correct proctors are available to the technicians. A lot of times there just ends up being a lot of phone calls, and sometimes we've got a quick turnaround, and we need to get the basic proctor information, and even before some of the other data is available. And so a lot of that happens in kind of an ad hoc fashion. We try and provide some tools to help with the maintenance of this list, and to make sure that maybe it's a little easier for the technician to select appropriate proctor that he needs for a particular project or a particular circumstance he finds himself in. So in Vahalo, of course, a proctor summary information is just a resource. As we discuss over and over again, in our resources is where we put information that gets into the system once and gets used over and over again. And a proctor summary is very typical of that. And of course, uh, we want to keep this list as lean and mean as we can. And so a lot of times we do proctors that we're not going to be using for technicians out in the field. And so we're just doing a bunch of proctors, and they don't want to go onto our summary list. So, having every proctor that we do on that list can sometimes just clutter it up. And so we need to wait to identify those proctors that want to be on the list and make it easy to get those things put together. So as we get in and do a proctor, of course, we can just add things manually, put in the name, and then go into the particular proctor and add the properties and information that we want to have on a particular proctor. And that's kind of the manual, slow way of doing things. But we want to be able to do this a little more quickly and easily, and maintain this list of proctors easily. And of course, this is the list of proctor information that's available for every resource. You can see the listing, and we've got all the data that you want to look for, and you can download these, typical of any type of data grid that we have in the system. But in order to, we can also make this available on dashboards. Of course, the technicians out in the field will have access to the proctor list, and it's available to them, and they can go look at the proctor list, and it's got all the information, and it can get maintained automatically and easily available for them. And of course, it's getting updated instantly as soon as anybody in the lab enters new data or creates a new summary. But let's take a quick look at how we actually create these proctor summary lists and getting people information from a proctor test into the proctor summary list. So we're in projects now, and we're actually going to go look at doing a proctor here we've got one that's just a proctor that's already been done. Let's go look at a proctor that is just a blank one to start with. And of course, this will just be something that gets filled out as we go, date information, whatever else needs to get done, we'll start it and fill out the proctor information. This should look familiar to anybody that does proctors. We add other information that we need. And then at the very bottom, once we've finished all of the data that we want to put into a proctor, we have a button down here to create a resource for a proctor summary resource. And when we create this, the system goes through, takes all of the data from the proctor that's relevant to go into that proctor resource, in addition to other information from other siblings in the assignment structure. So a sample will have a whole series, and if you might have a Atterberg plastic limit, there might be a swell test, there might be other things that we want to have information. That information also go into the proctor summary. So this create resource will actually go in and do all of the creation of that proctor summary, so that nobody has to manually enter any of this stuff. All of the stuff just comes from the original source of where that information was put into the system. Here's an example of a proctor that has been finished, and the button has been pushed to create the proctor resource, and you'll see that all the information is entered into this proctor. And when you get to the bottom, instead of the create proctor resource button, now you've got a proctor that's actually linked to this one. We can go to that proctor and of course see all that information, which is helpful on occasion. But we also, in some situations, you want to be able to go in and do a proctor, get the basic information put together, and then come back and fill in some of the other information later. So after you've pushed created a resource once, you can go out and do an update of the same resource, and perhaps you've got an expansion index that you've done, or a swell test that now has been done after the the critical information to get a rush out to the technician so he can get his first density test taken care of. Now we can do an update, and all the information that we want to get added to that proctor summary now gets added in, and we can just do a quick update to those. So it makes it a lot easier to kind of maintain those proctors and do what we need to do in order to keep them going. And of course, we have a variety of different formats of the final report that we do. And just a couple of examples. Here's kind of a typical proctor with a curve and other information that you might want to see. Here's one that Texas wants a lot more information, so we provide them with all that information, variety of different sign-offs, and the curve is still there. Another one that we do, typical combination types of reports where not only do we put the proctor information, but the entire gradation is here. If there's a swell test, the expansion test, the plasticity and that kind of thing, and resistivity all show up on the same combination report. And there's just three examples of a variety of different proctor combinations that we can do for different folks to meet the needs of different jurisdictions and different clients that they might have. So anyway, now the next part of any proctor system is to be able to go out and select the proctor density test. We've got a series of 10 tests that we can get done here. When we go in and select this proctor, we actually come up with a list of proctors. By default, it's just going to show us the proctors associated with this particular proctor or project. Another thing that we might want to see is proctors that maybe aren't associated directly with this project, but are proctors that were done in the gravel pits or quarries that are available in this particular area. So we've got another filter where we can go in and bring up those proctors that have a supplier associated with them. And of course, we've got all the other information that we want here. and or we can just hit all and go hit all of those things also. Another filter we want out here is to be able to identify if we've got old proctors in the list, maybe we don't want to use those, or we've got sampling and minimum sampling guidelines that we want to be able to use, so we can put those in and just look for stuff in the last 6 months and go filter for just those that are more current and be able to do what we need to do. We'll go pick up everything in our dummy data here so we can kind of see. You'll see that we got the same proctor associated with multiple labs. We can click on a particular proctor and highlight that proctor, follow it across to make sure that, oh, hey, yeah, this has got the stuff that we need to in this selection process. And then when we get ready to select a proctor, boom, we select a proctor and away we go. So we try to make this selection process pretty easy and save time for the technicians to be able to do things that they need to be able to do, and make it easy for the lab manager or lab support staff to be able to maintain this proctor list. And when we go in and select a proctor, we don't need to have 1,000 proctors to look at that we need to sort and filter and deal with things. We see just those proctors that we need to see, and don't have to make a big difficult selection process. So a few little ideas about how we try to make proctors a little easier. It's a pain point for all of us, and hopefully we can make our lives just a little bit more simple. Thanks again, and we'll talk again soon.